If I was Gollum, I would open this up by calling you guys my book preciousness is... Anyway, hello, I'm Kira, and today we're going to be discussing all of my most anticipated releases for August that are coming up. I'm really excited. There's actually quite a few books like that I'm really looking forward to. I read a wide variety of books, so like I did lists like all of the books like that are from different genres, both YA and adult. Also, once again, this is gonna be like regular for these videos. I also included a total list of every single book that kind of struck my fancy. Now the ones I'm going to be listing in this video verbally are the ones like that are kind of top tier for me, but if you want to see like a list of everything that I am excited about that's coming out in the month of August, because by no means do I have time to go through every single thing, so I've just picked the ones like that I'm most excited about, not the ones like that kind of struck my interest. But if you want to see all the books that I'm kind of interested in the month of August, I did leave a list in the bottom just in case you guys are interested in checking that out, and they all have links to Goodreads, so if you guys like want to click on those or whatever, of course I'm no affiliation with Goodreads, but I figured it would help. Also, by no means is that list a full list of everything that's coming out in the month of August. It's just the ones like that kind of I had a passing interest in or were really interested in. So let's go ahead and get into all the books that I'm really excited for that are coming out in the month of August. The very first book I wanted to talk about is coming out on August 4th, and I'm pretty sure a lot of people are very excited about this. I have mixed emotions because of my affiliation with the series. It is Midnight Sun by Stephanie Meyer. This is actually like the first book of Twilight in the series, but told from Edward's perspective, and I don't really think I need to say more about that one. That one's coming out August 4th. What I meant was I liked the first book, hated the second one, liked the third one, hated the fourth one. So I'm kind of like, I have a lot of mixed emotions about how I'm going to feel about this, and I think I'm going to wait for like some of the reviews to come out. But I did want to mention like this because I know there are a lot of other people that are very, very, very excited for this book. So the next book that I am interested in is Luster, a Novel by Raven Laleni. It was actually described as being a comedic book about a black woman who falls into an open marriage. Edie is struggling in her 20s, and she is struggling as an artist, and she's got like kind of like a not a great apartment, you know, in the city, and being the fact that she's struggling as an artist, you know, she kind of like doesn't really like have, you know, like a lot of like direction like where her life's headed. But then she meets Eric, who is a digital activist with a family in New Jersey. Edie actually ends up finding herself unemployed, but she also finds herself kind of like in Eric's open marriage and his sexual life in their house in the suburbs in New Jersey. She kind of becomes friends with the wife. The wife is extremely friendly about the whole thing, like with him having an affair with her, you know, their open marriage and stuff. And actually Edie becomes kind of a role model for their adopted daughter, and Edie is pretty much the first black woman that the adopted daughter has ever met. This is described as being darkly comedic, sexually charged, and socially disruptive. And if all of those things are not enough to get you to read this book, I don't know what is. The next book that I'm going to mention is The Comeback by Ella Berman. This book is a hard-hitting book. Of course, like, I love hard-hitting books because I just think that there's so much value to them. I think like they have so much to offer. And basically this is a deep dive into the psyche of an actress who has been abused by a director that she worked with for many, many years when she was younger. Well, she goes into hiding for a while, and then she comes back out only to be offered a chance to award the director that abused her a Lifetime Achievement Award. But our main character, Grace, is offered a choice. She can either continue to hide behind her trauma, or she can come and bring it to the limelight and just let everything show. This book is also described to be alternating between past and present, so it seems like you're going to get like a lot of like the hard-hitting stuff, like with what exactly the director did to her when she was younger, and then also like how it has presently kind of disturbed her. I feel like this is probably going to be along the lines of My Dark Vanessa, that pretty much did the same thing. I'm not sure like what kind of abuse she suffered. Like, it doesn't like really stipulate like what kind of abuse. It doesn't say like whether or not it was sexual or mental or anything else like that. But I am very, very curious about this book because no matter how hard My Dark Vanessa was to read, I really appreciated it because like it brought a lot of things like that people who go through trauma deal with and deal with long term, and it brought it to light. So I feel like The Comeback this book in particular is going to be doing the same thing. The next book that I'm really excited about that is also coming out August 4th is Loba, written by Romania Garber. Manuela is on the run from her Argentinian crime family. Her and her whole family are on the run from her Argentinian crime family. They're confined to a very small apartment in Miami, Florida. One day, Manuel's protective bubble is completely shattered. Her grandmother is attacked and her mother is arrested by ICE as an illegal immigrant. She is now homeless, she has nowhere to go, and the only thing she has to go on is this mysterious Z that links her to her past. A lot of what she's about to dive into has to do with her dead father, who had a lot of ties to his Argentinian crime family. This book revolves heavily around Argentinian folklore, and as Manuela continues to dive into her past, she realizes that she's not only the one that's illegal, but her entire existence is illegal. This book sounds absolutely fantastic, and I am so excited for this. It is the first in a series for YA fantasy. The next book that's also being released August 4th is Set Fire to the Gods by Sarah Rosh and Kristen Simmons. This follows one character named Ash who has been descended from tons of gladiators, and one day her mother is fighting in the arena, being a gladiator herself, and ends up getting killed. Ash is on a mission to avenge her mother, and the only way she's going to do that is if she overthrows the fire god. Now we also are following Maddock. Maddock is another gladiator, and he is in the arena, and they think he has earth magic, but actually his magic is descended from something much more ancient, and has to hide what his real ability is because his magic ability hasn't been seen in centuries. People would probably not be okay with him if they knew about what kind of magic he actually had. Ash's revenge plot goes extremely wrong, and the only way they can settle everything is through the gladiator games where she meets Maddock. Now there does seem like there's going to be a little bit of a romance between Ash and Maddock, and I wonder if it's going to be an angsty romance because they're actually opponents in the ring. So overall, this book does sound really interesting and really fabulous. I love the premise for this. And I do love a world where there's gladiators, so I do think this is just going to be a fun read. The next book is called Saya Martinez and the Moonlight and the Beginning of Everything by Raquel Vanquez Gillard. Saya has been living in this town for 3 years, ever since her mother disappeared when she got targeted by ICE. Her mother's incident of being deported has been kind of considered a taboo thing, nobody talks about it, nobody acknowledges it anymore. Saya knows that her mother must be dead, but every time there's a new moon, she drives into the desert and she dreams of seeing her again. She lights a candle to hopefully guide her mother home. One night when she was in the desert, a blue spacecraft comes and kind of just turns her world upside down. And oddly enough, it's carrying her mother, who turns out to be very much alive. And Saya has to race to kind of save her mother from these alien soldiers. This just sounds really magical. This has actually been described as anybody who loves Aristotle and Dante, Secrets to the Universe, meets Roswell, and that's pretty much how this book is being marketed. So I'm really excited because it sounds not only is it going to be a dreamy read, but kind of a science fiction read, and it is a YA fantasy science fiction. So now we're going to be moving on to August 13th for Stardaughter by Shativa Thacker. This has actually been pitched as being a combination of Neil Gaiman's Stardust and Hindu mythology, which just sounds really epic. Now, don't get me wrong, I was not the biggest fan of Stardust itself, but I love story, what the story was about. So I'm really excited to see what they do with this book. Now, Shatil is our main character, and she's half Stardaughter and half mortal. Her mother is the star and her dad is the mortal. Now she's starting to come of age, and her powers for the stars are starting to flare, and it accidentally puts her dad in the hospital, and now she has to go on a quest to kind of find out how to bring him back to reality, because she kind of messed up big time when her powers started to flare. So she starts to seek out her biological mother, who returned to the sky a long time ago. Her quest is going to take her to the celestial courts and, just everywhere, and it just sounds really amazing and really fantastic, and I'm really curious to see how wonderful this book is, and not to mention the fact the cover is gorgeous. The next book I'm going to talk about is also coming out April 11th, and it's actually a non-fiction book that I was really kind of curious about. It's called Caste: The Origins of Discontent by Isabel Wilkerson. This is actually kind of a portrait of the American caste system and how the history of it, how it shaped things, how it relates to how things are today. And it talks a lot about political things that are very important, as far as socioeconomic status and like where you are at in it, like, you know, and history of it. And it sounds to me like this book is going to go like on a case-by-case study, like it's going to have like a lot of different people like that are kind of like putting their 2 cents in, like about like the history of the caste system, how it's affected them. It just sounds like a really like interesting nonfiction book, like that kind of studies like how caste system, you know, upper lower class and everything, and it really kind of dives into how caste systems like were kind of like created and came to fruition. So it just sounds really amazing, and when I saw it like in the description of it and everything, it just sounded like really like, you know, very relevant to everything like that's going on like now in the world. And it feels like it's going to be continuing to feel very relevant, especially because like as time goes on, like especially in the United States, like we feel more of the division between upper, middle, and lower class, like, and it's actually getting to a point like where middle class is becoming less and less of a thing, and it's just becoming more of like a lower and upper class. And I feel like there's like so much like struggle and things like that has been going on, like, and it's been going on for a long time, but I feel like this gives a much more in-depth look of what's going on and how it came to fruition. The next book, also coming out August 11th, is Before You Go by Tommy Butler. This is actually a speculative literary fiction, and a lot of those are hit or miss, but the premise for this sounds fantastic and I'm really intrigued by it. So this is kind of described, I'm trying to figure out like how to piece like this together in my own words, but I really just rather read this to you because this is like what really hooked me. And it said, in the before, humankind is created with a hole in its heart. The designers not realizing their mistake, if it was a mistake, until it was too late. And so this is kind of like Elliot's quest to kind of fill that hole in his heart. It's also been described as profound yet playful. Before You Go is a beautiful imaginative journey into the ache and wonder of being human and the quest of a meaningful life. So Elliot Chance is our main character, and he's never felt like he belongs in the world. He's never felt like he belongs anywhere, and he has like this hole in his heart that he's been trying to desperately fill, which I feel like in the book is probably going to be a physical hole because of like, you know, it being speculative fiction, but I also feel like it's going to have like a lot of metaphors like that are going to be spiraling off from it, like that are also going to have to do with meanings of life and like how to fill those holes, you know, like in finding meaning in life. So in Elliot's desperation to find meaning in his life, he actually ends up joining a support group, and he meets 2 other drifting souls, one named Sasha, who is this girl who writes coded messages in the copy she writes for advertising companies, and Banner, who gives such detailed descriptions of the future you would have actually think he's been there. With these 2 unlikely allies, he launches into business life hoping to find meaning and truth and everything to his existence. This just sounds really intriguing to me, and I'm really kind of curious like to see like how this is received. I'm interested in this one. I think it's going to be great, and it is speculative fiction, so I mean, like I said, those are usually hit or miss, but like this just sounds like a very intriguing premise that I really want to explore more of. This book that I'm really excited for that's coming out on August 11th is Kiss My Cupcake by Helena Hunting. The reason like why I thought this was going to be just fantastic is because it's about 2 people who own competing cupcake companies. It's going to be a rom-com. It sounds like it's going to be hate to love. And so far, like a lot of the early like ratings for it was like 4.22. Of course, like on Goodreads, like a lot of people like rate stuff before like they actually have read the book. So I'm kind of like, you know, wondering like, you know, if this is going to be like really amazing, because like the premise for it sounds like really amazing. But Blair and Ronan, which are the 2 main characters like in this, they are constantly trying to one-up each other. I mean, I don't think I really need to say anymore, but like this sounds like another like great hate to love romance. And I really love those because like it gives so much time like for character development and for like the relationship to grow and for things just to become like really amazing. So this book is another book that I'm really, really excited about. So there's another book, it's coming out August 13th. It's called The Midnight Library by Matt Haig. I love Matt Haig. I've read quite a few of his books. I read a couple of his nonfiction books that have to deal with anxiety, but I also read his other book called The Humans, and I have loved pretty much everything that I've read by him so far. So when I saw like that this book was coming out, I just thought it would be fantastic. This is about a library where you have books that you can actually get a glimpse into seeing what would have happened had you made a different choice. And so like it's kind of like caught between life and death and the choices we make, and you know, like how those choices could affect our future, but they're told in a library. I'm so over the moon about this book. I think it's going to be fantastic. Like I said, I've loved everything by Matt Haig so far, so I definitely am going to have to check this one out. Now we're on to August 18th, and there is a book called Hollow Pox The Hunt for Morgan Crow by Jessica Townsend. This is the third book in the Morgan Crow series, and I read the first one. I haven't read the second one so far, but I loved the first one so much. It had like such like awesome vibes to it, and it was just such a fun book. This is basically about Morgan Crow. She is born cursed, and they were going to sacrifice her and a bunch of other kids who were born on the same day because apparently that birth date was cursed. And she ends up getting rescued by like this mysterious man that takes her back to his house and actually puts her into school, like where she is going to be competing for a spot for prestige. It was such a great book. Like, I love the first one, and I'm really excited for like the third one, because like the more like that we get released of these, the closer I am like to being able to just sit down and binge the series, because this first book was just such a fun book. And it does, like, of course, like, have the chosen one trope, and it also has, you know, like, there's an evil, like, one kind of, like, lurking in the background. And so, like, if you're a fan of Harry Potter, I feel like you're also going to be a fan of this book series as well. It is a middle grade book series, but it is fantastic. The next book that is also coming out the 18th of August is Ray Bear by Jordan Ifueko. Sorry, our main character has always longed for the warmth of a family, but she's been kept pretty isolated for the majority of her life. She was raised by a mysterious mother who was pretty much like kept her in isolation for the good portion of her life, so she is really like desperate like to make friends and have, you know, connections and everything else. One day she gets sent to the capital to be considered to be one of the chosen ones for the crown prince. Only 11 people get to do this. She ends up being picked for this. This closeness and the fact that she was chosen is just a dream come true for her, because she has longed her entire life to have some place and someone that she can just connect with. But there's a lady that was her keeper, and she has other ideas for her future, and she wants Tesare to kill the crown prince once she has gained his trust. But she also doesn't want to be controlled, and she doesn't want to be used as a pawn. But the question is, with everything, like all the manipulation that she suffered like her entire life, and the only person that she's ever really known, is she going to be strong enough to choose a different path for herself? This book sounds absolutely fantastic, and it is definitely top tier as far as I'm concerned for releases that I'm so excited that are coming out in August. Now, the next thing we are on to is August 25th. And it's going to be The Architects of Memory by Karen Osborne. This is an LGBTQIA adult science fiction book, and it just, this is another like one that just kind of had me reeling because it just sounds so fantastic. Ash Jackson is a terminally ill salvage pilot that is looking for a cure for her terminal illness. She actually is currently like in indentured servitude, and her plan is to lie, beg, bargain for anything she can do to not only get out of her indentured servitude, but also find a cure for her terminal illness. Her crew ends up salvaging a genocidal weapon from a dead colony. And in this, Ash uncovers a conspiracy for corporate intrigue and betrayal that threatens to turn her into a living weapon. This sounds so good. I'm so excited for this. I think it's going to be fantastic. Another book that's also coming out August 25th is Against the Loveless World by Susan Abulhala. Now, here is a Palestinian woman that spends her days in solitary confinement. She was born in Kuwait in the 70s to a Palestinian refugee. Like, she dreams of a family, she dreams of having a man that loves her, children, everything that she could ever want. She ends up getting married and being jilted by her lover, which forces her like into things like prostitution, as her family is on the brink of poverty. With the invasion of the US in Iraq, she is actually forced to uproot herself once again and go into Jordan. And then that also becomes temporary, and then she ends up in Palestine. And this is like where her destiny, like everything that she's hoped for, finally starts to unfold. And here is described as having like very moral ambiguity, and you know, like this is a very like another hard-hitting contemporary that is more of a historical fiction, and it's about a woman who is Palestinian, and it just sounds really interesting, and it sounds like another like, you know, trek through life and self-discovery and, you know, being strong and persevering in the face of adversity. And this is another book like that I thought sounded really, really amazing. Another book that I'm going to be discussing that's also coming out August 25th is Where Dreams Descend by Janella Angeles. This is actually a book like that I received in Owl Crate as an early release, and I read it and I loved it. It's been pitched as a combination of Phantom of the Opera, Moulin Rouge, and The Night Circus, and I feel like it does a very good job of hitting all of those blocks, because like you have your main character Kalia, who lives in this hellfire house and has since she has been a little girl, because when she was a baby she was dropped off at the Hellfire House and she has no idea what her past is. She is actually the star performer and she is a magician to the master, Jack. And Jack kind of gives me the Phantom of the Opera vibes, and she being the character like that she is, who comes down in the middle of the stage on a chandelier, gives me Satine vibes. And she ends up dreaming of going to compete in this nearby city's competition for magicians. And it's just about having like dreams come true, but there's so much like, you know, mysteriousness like that is kind of incorporated into this as well, which I thought was really cool. And it felt like very steadily paced. It was a little bit more of a slow burn, but it was really, really good, and I'm very excited like that this is going to be out in the world for everybody to read. Well guys, that is everything that I am really excited about. Like, those are the top tier. There are definitely like more that's listed in the list down below as far as like ones like that I'm interested in. I covered like all the ones like that are like the top of my list. I really hope you guys like this video. If you guys like this video, hit the like, hit subscribe, hit the little bell icon if you guys want to receive emails every single time I post. I'm also on Instagram, Amazon, Twitter, and Goodreads. Those links are linked in the description below, and I will see you guys again very soon.